What's up guys, Jake here, and in this video I'm bringing you guys a little post commentary of a game I played the other day. This is a new deck that I've been working on called Value Warrior, and I believe I'm playing against Dragon Priest. I believe it's the same list that Reynad was using that a lot of people are pretty hyped about. But yeah, this Value Warrior deck is one that I've been working on for a little bit now, a few days, since the Grand Tournament came out. And I kind of like it a lot. I believe it's a pretty strong deck. Under rank 10, it has a 67% win rate for me, 67 exactly, which is pretty good. Obviously, it's not Legend or anything, and it is kind of an unrefined deck, so I don't know if it could be piloted to Legend. I'm sure it could by the right players, but yeah, so basically the aim of this deck is to bring the game to the late game and just outvalue your opponent with just really high value cards that are often, you know, too slow to play in other decks. But in Control Warrior, you oftentimes can bring the game really far into far long, often into fatigue, because you have a lot of premier removal cards such as Execute, Shield Slam. You know, you've got Brawl. We run Bash in this deck, which I think is a pretty good card. But I'll talk about that in a little bit. And as you can see here, we're behind on the board quite a bit, but this deck does really well to fight against the board. It actually isn't as bad against mid-range decks as some other variants of Control Warrior. Oftentimes the mid-range decks are the toughest because once, you know, things get behind taunt, it's really tough for the warrior to deal with them without you know, using their weapon or using one of their, like I said, premier removal cards. Like, you don't want to use an Execute or something on, you know, like a Blackwing Technician or something like that. So oftentimes that's a struggle for it. But because we have so many good weapons as well as some new TGT cards, we can actually fight for the board pretty well. Some of the ones that I have in this deck are Bash. Like I said, I think Bash is an awesome card. It lets you deal the 3 damage around the taunts, which is a pretty big deal. I think it's kind of same utility as like a Frostbolt. Basically, you're paying 1 more mana, but you're getting 3 armor, which synergizes super well with just the whole concept of the deck, as well as the Shield Slam. So I think it's a great card for that reason. And we also have 2 Refreshment Vendor, which is kind of an interesting card. I think it's awesome in controlled decks where you're not really ever hitting face anyway. So giving them the 4 health is pretty much worthless, and you're getting 4 health plus a 3/5, which trades really well into a lot of common minions such as things like the Piloted Shredder and others. So here we actually fight for the back for the board. As you can see, my opponent had a decent board. He obviously had the taunt. He had the Northshire Cleric and 2 Blackwing Technicians, but pretty much at this point we have the board almost under control here. We still have looks like the Blackwing Corruptor to deal with, but at this point in the game it looks really good. Like, you can kind of tell how this deck's going to perform based on how you play and how you draw in the mid game, because that's really where this deck wins or loses. A lot of the times if you have the things like Bash, like, you know, Death Spite, then you have a pretty good shot of doing pretty well. And once you get to the late game, this deck pretty much just beats any other deck. Because you have so much armor, you can win fatigue battles very easily, and you have such high value cards that even if they remove them, it's really difficult to negate some of the effects they have. And some of those late game cards, as you can see on the side, we use Nexus Champion Saraad in combination with Justicar Trueheart to get armor as well as some spell cards in our hand that we can use later. We also have Kodorider, which also synergizes with our hero ability. I really like Kodorider a lot, actually. I did initially run 1, but I decided it was good enough to warrant running a 2nd, so I really like it for that reason. I think it's a pretty good card. And we also run Gorehowl. I think Gorehowl is awesome with Justicar Trueheart. I think Justicar Trueheart really makes Gorehowl a viable card, because before using Gorehowl, it's always been a good card, but a lot of the times you can remove things like Dr. Boom with your Gorehowl, but you don't want to. You don't want to take that 7 face damage. You want to keep your armor high and to remove a lot of these cards without having to hit them with your face. A lot of the times that can be kind of detrimental, but in this deck where you can armor up and get 4 armor plus all the other crazy armor gaining cards that we have, a lot of the times you really don't take like any damage at all, which is really, really nice. I definitely enjoy that aspect of it. I think Gorehowl really has a mold, has a place in this deck. And other than that, we're also running Sneed's Old Shredder, which is a very good card. It's probably one of the highest value cards. It's just oftentimes way too slow in other decks, but in this deck it's actually pretty great, simply because if they remove it, you know, you get something out of it. And we also have Ysera for basically the same effect. It's a hard card to remove. You know, it doesn't, it's not weak to like BGH, neither is Sneeds, obviously. And if they silence it, you know, then something else you play isn't going to get silenced. And basically the whole point of the deck is to gain value through these cards. And you do that by playing them, and then they give you something else. Like, it's really important with this deck that you play these cards, because if you just played like big minions, if those get removed, you're kind of screwed, because then your hand, a lot of the times in Control Warrior, by the end of the game, their hand gets really small. But with this deck, it always stays pretty large. You always have a pretty good hand advantage here. And this guy actually makes the mistake of using Valen's Chosen on the Dragonkin Sorcerer. That's one reason I don't really like Dragonkin Sorcerer. A lot of people are using it since Reynad was using it. I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but I don't like it because when you use Valen's Chosen on it, that gives it us up to 7 attack, which is weak to BGH, which when the Priest isn't really running that many other BGH targets, I don't think they're running any, it's kind of weak. So yeah, and so as you can see, we're getting some refreshment vendor value here, that those funnel cakes. But yeah, and this deck's really great because, like I was saying, because you get so many cards off of the cards that you play, and that's why it's a high value card. It's kind of similar to like some old control like shamans using Neptulon. Like Neptulon isn't always going to give you the best cards because they're Murlocs, and neither is something like Nexus Champion Saraad. You're not always guaranteed to get good cards, but a lot of the times just having cards is enough. And all of these cards basically give you more stuff to play than you would initially have to begin with. You end up having well more than 30 cards, which is pretty awesome. I definitely enjoy this deck for that reason, and I think it's definitely one of the better decks that I've worked on since the Grand Tournament came out. I do want to give a little shout out to Blame Truth as well as Dog. I actually watched Blame Truth play a deck he called Greed Warrior, which played a lot of taunts as well as Sneeds and Ysera. So that was part of my inspiration for playing this. And I also saw a deck that Dog was playing against Trump when I was watching Trump stream, and it was really exciting. He was running a lot of the same stuff. He was running Kodoriders, and I don't know if he was running Nexus Champion Saraad, but he was running a lot of those high value cards as well as Neferi, and he actually won by getting a Holy Wrath for 10 and hitting face with it, so that was pretty cool. But yeah, so at this point in the game, you can kind of tell it's wrapping up, though, simply because of how much board presence we have. I mean, if you look at it, we have 3 3/5s on the board right now, and it's especially good against this Priest here, which is actually a pretty common class now that Reynad started playing Dragon Priest. And those 3 3/5s are awesome because they don't die to a Light Bomb. They need like a Light Bomb and a Holy Light, which they can't do unless they played like Thorison. So it's really hard for a lot of decks to remove cards like that. And a lot of the times they don't want to. You know, they're waiting for these big threats like Ragnaros, Dr. Boom, and just having a lot of like 3/5 minions is super good in a deck like this. And you can also buff them like I just did with the Cruel Taskmaster. And here we're actually going to have a crazy value turn. We're going to get another Kodo summoned. And we're also going to get a card off of Justicar Trueheart. Looks like we get a Wrath, which is a really good card to get. It's not obviously like the highest value card because it's not something like, you know, a 5 or 6 mana card, but it's a good utility card, so it's pretty awesome here. And I believe it actually sets up for a lethal turn later on. Although this deck is really slow, which is the only thing that kind of makes it not very good for laddering with. It's exceptionally slow, so you don't really get that many games in when you're playing it. It'd probably be better if you're just trying to ladder to get higher up. It'd probably be better to play something like a mid-range deck, like the Shaman or a mid-range Hunter or something like that. But if you're looking to have a little bit of fun and you want to utilize some new Grand Tournament cards, definitely try this deck out. It's a very, very fun deck, and it's pretty exceptional. To be perfectly honest, I think it's done very well, and like I said, it has a 67% win rate for me under rank 10. I think now I'm like rank 6 with it, so it does pretty well. And it looks like here we're actually gonna have the proper cards to have lethal here because we have that Power Shot and that Wrath. These 2 Twilight Guardians aren't actually gonna be able to prevent me from killing him. But regardless, I mean, it's not like he really had much of a chance here. I mean, once you get this far ahead with this deck. It's just insane. Like, if you look at the board, like 2 of the minions I have on the board and 3 of the cards in my hand are cards that I got from other minions being played. So that's a total of right now just 6 cards that I'm not even running that I got value off of, and that's not including the minion spawn from Sneeds or things that I got from Ysera or Sylvanas. So like I said, it's a pretty awesome deck. I thoroughly enjoy playing it, and hopefully you guys give it a try, because like I said, it's definitely a very solid deck, and it's a pretty good use of all your new Grand Tournament cards. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like. It helps me out a lot and encourages me to do more Hearthstone videos. And yeah, I'll see you guys later. Peace.